Good morning. My name is Don Daniel, founder of P.I.L.L Method International, a better way of eliminating debt. And today we're going to be talking about the hidden chains of debt, how illiteracy keeps us financially enslaved. All right. So I'm looking forward to talking to you about it. Okay. Oh, all right, folks. So let's go ahead and we're going to dive right in. Okay. We're going to dive right in because we want to spend our whole 90 minutes here talking about this subject. So buckle your seatbelts. Let's get ready to go. All right, listen, we're here, and we're live on Clubhouse, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook this morning. And today's show is about financial illiteracy and what happens when we don't know what we don't know about this. So let me give you an overview. Now, throughout history, education has always been threatening to the status quo. In slavery era America, literacy was criminalized because it allowed enslaved people to think critically, organize, and escape bondage. In today's financial world, a different kind of illiteracy persists. Financial illiteracy. We're not taught how loans actually work. We're not taught how interest is calculated. We're not taught how amortization silently extracts wealth. We don't know how to read the system. This episode connects, these historical dots. From literacy suppression to financial suppression. It reveals how financial violence today operates through systematic education failure, engineered ignorance, and deliberate complexity that benefits the financially educated class at the expense of everyone else. So, folks, we don't know what we don't know about this system. If you start asking your questions, what do I really know? What do I really understand about the financial system and where we exist in the whole thing? All right. So some historical context. Enslaved people were forbidden to read. Literacy meant empowerment. Frederick Douglass and Nat Turner risked their lives just to be able to learn how to read. In these days, if there was an educated slave on the plantation, they risked their lives in teaching other slaves how to read. They would study at night and work in the fields during the day. That's how a lot of people became educated that weren't supposed to be educated. I mean, education could cost you your life. That's how important it was. So when post-Civil War, education for the freedmen was seen as a political threat. Why? Because poor whites and blacks were undereducated. And if all of these people were undereducated, what did that mean? That meant that those who were educated could lead others to vote against their interest. So if you start educating poor whites, if you start educating blacks and start giving them the vote, those who are in power were afraid of losing their power. Okay, so white lawmakers feared that both black and poor white citizens could form an educated political force if granted broad access to education. Folks, is there something behind the fact that this current administration has gotten rid of the Department of Education? Is there an attack on an educated public? I mean, those people who benefit most are those who are the most marginalized. Those people in power have education. Those people who are out of power, a lot of them, we're focused on, do we really want the electorate to be fully educated when it comes to understanding the bills that Congress is passing? Okay, let me bring up. I'm going to put something on the screen here. I'm going to do a little research, okay? And it's going to be right in front of you. I don't have these notes already, but I heard something. All right, so we're going to share this screen. I'm going to put something on the screen. If you want to see this, make sure you go to YouTube so you can actually see it. All right, so let me bring this up, new window, and I'm going to bring up Chat GPT, and I'm going to ask the question here about, okay, is there, okay, let me share it with you. We're going to add it to the screen here, right? Is there a being put forth that would allow a president to seek to be elected to a third term? Now, this is something I heard about, okay? So let me put this back on the screen, all right? And we're going to check it out. All right, let's see. Share the screen. And there it is, okay? Let's see. All right. Doing a search here. All right, Ken, I see you there. All right, come on up. All right. All right, let's see here. All right, so let's see here. The bottom line, okay, here it is. Ken, I'm trying to invite you up. Let me see here. Invite to speak. There you go. There. Can you come up? All right. I tried to invite you. Maybe you have to go back out and come back in. Yeah, I've already tried 3 times. It won't let me. So hopefully, if that doesn't work, go back out and come back in. And we'll see about getting you up here. All right. So it says yes. There currently. Let me add this to the stage. Okay. Yes, currently a proposal in Congress to amend the Constitution to allow a president to serve a third term. All right. In January 2025, Republican Andy Ogles introduced House Joint Resolution 29, aiming to amend the 22nd Amendment so that a person could be elected up to 3 times, but only if the first 2 terms were non-consecutive. What does that mean? Do you see why it's important for us to know how to read these things? If you take a look at it, this would enable someone like Donald Trump, who served a non-consecutive second term, all right, would allow him to run again for a 3rd term. But someone like Obama, who served 2 consecutive terms, would not be allowed to run again for a 3rd term. Do you see how these kinds of things are ridiculous when you actually sit down and read them for yourself? But what if we didn't know how to read? What if you got your political information not from reading, but from echo chambers, from Facebook or from Reddit or from somebody who was talking to you through social media, telling you what's going on, instead of you being able to read it and understand it for yourselves? But then again, then they'll bury it deep inside a bill that is supposed to be a great, big, beautiful bill, but in there would restrict your ability to check people if they're doing the wrong thing. My goodness. What are we doing when we restrict education for people? So when have an educated people, let's go ahead and go forward here. Let me take this off the screen, but I just wanted to show you this. When have an educated people, all right, let's see, you have a people who can make decisions for themselves. When you have an educated people, they can make decisions for themselves, not decisions led by others against their own interests. Folks, this is why it is so important for us to learn how not only to be educated, it is important for us to be financially literate, financially educated, and not let other people tell you what's going on. Okay? Today, banks, lenders, and even schools avoid teaching loan mechanics. What do I mean by loan mechanics? How does a loan actually work? So let me ask a few questions here, okay? Here's some. Do you know how to figure interest rate? Do you know what it means to have a 3% interest rate on a mortgage? That it really means you're going to pay back 51% of what you borrowed? Has anybody ever taught you that? Do you know how the bank gets from 3% to 51%? Well, let's talk about that for just a minute. Hey, let's talk about it for just a minute. Let me put this back on this. Let me put this back on the screen. Okay. So we're going to, and I'm going to show you this. Okay. So we have a $200,000 mortgage at 3%. Okay. For 30 years. Look at this. The bank wants $103,555.60 interest on a $200,000 loan at 3%. Folks, total interest paid as a percentage of principal is 51%. It's right there. It's right in front of us. But do you know how to calculate that? Do you know how it gets from 3% to 51%? Is it taught in schools? Is it taught anywhere that this is how this works? Are we actually taught that 9 out of 10 people will never pay off a mortgage because we're not taught how a loan works? Um, so let's do another one. Okay. Let's do 6%. Okay. If it's 6%, now the bank wants, on a $200,000 loan, the bank wants $231,676. Folks, that's 115% of what you borrowed. Do you know how they figure going from 6% to 115%? Paying more interest than you borrowed in principal, meaning you're going to pay for the house twice, paying back $431,000. And 9 out of 10 people will never pay off a mortgage. So they will end up paying a lot more than twice for housing. All because we've never been taught. The average family juggles 13 different debts. 35% to 39% of your income just pays interest alone. Listen, do an experiment. I need you all to pull up all of your bills, every single one of the loans that you have. And even if, listen, most people are not in trouble with their bills, with their debts. They can pay their bills easily. But you have no idea how much interest you are actually paying each month. And this is going to be quite the experiment. Here's what I'd like for you to do. Pull up all of your loans that carry interest and add up just the interest payments, not the entire payment, just the interest portion on all of your debt. And then do the calculation on what percentage is this money, what is the percentage of your income that interest is taking up. For most of us, it will be somewhere between 35% to 39% of our income. That's the way it's designed. But you feel like you're doing well in life because you can pay your bills. You can go on vacation. You can buy a new car. You can get a great house. Your kids can go to school. Everything is great. You're living in a great neighborhood. All of these things are fine, but your wealth is being siphoned off because we are not educated on how the lending system actually works. 35 to 39%. Okay. The mortgage mechanism, banks don't want you to understand. Why? Because folks, if we're educated on this whole thing, if we're taught how education actually was, oh, by the way, I don't want to forget, there is a program that you want to listen to, a podcast called Throughline. All right. And let me get that link for you here. I'll get that link for you so that you can listen to this podcast. All right. Let me pull that up. Okay. Throughline, NPR. All right. The first Department of Education. All right, let's pull that link up. Okay, there it is. I'm going to put that in the chat. There we go. And you need to check this out. Okay, and we're going to put it online as well for those people to see. There we go. All right, the first Department of Education. Please listen to this show. What you're going to find out, ladies and gentlemen, when you listen to this show is the history of education and how the Department of Education came to be. And now there is a war on the Department of Education. And you've got to wonder why when you look at the historical context. When you look at the historical context, we're going to see that if you have an educated electorate, you can't just tell them any old thing. And as long as we can keep a significant portion of the voting people ignorant to what is really going on, we can be led like sheep to our own slaughter, and we actually vote for it. That is the danger. Okay? So if that is going on in the political arena, if this happened during slavery, what is happening now with our finances? And we don't even know how they actually work. Can I ask you all, people tell me all the time, Don, you make too much of this. All we have to do is pay more. Well, if that's the case, why would anybody pay more on their debt than they need to? Because they can get rid of the debt faster. They can get out of debt faster. So here's what I need you to understand. When you put an extra amount of money on your debt, what are you getting for it? You know you're saving time and you know you're saving interest. But do you know how much time and do you know how much interest? Have you ever been taught how to figure that out? How much time and how much interest are you actually saving? Here is an example. If your accountant had $500, I said, here's $500, put this on your mortgage. Now tell me how much interest you just saved. It is important to know what your outcomes are going to be when you do anything financially. You need to know what the results are. And folks, we're not taught how to measure results when it comes to dealing with our debt. This much I do know. If I gave you that same $500, no, okay, let's do it this way. You have $500. You take your own $500 and you go to the grocery store and you come out with one bag of groceries and bring it home. And somebody asks you, how much did this cost? And it says, I got $500 worth of groceries and it's just one bag of groceries. Somebody somewhere is going to get upset that your $500 got spent and all you have to show for it is one bag of groceries, because you can measure the results. The results don't match the money. One bag of groceries does not match $500 being spent at the grocery store. Or you spend $50 at the gas station and you only get 3 gallons worth of gas. Nobody is going to stand for that. But and because you can measure the results. How many of you have put extra money on a credit card, on a mortgage, on a student loan? How many have put extra money on there and you received a receipt that says, here is how much interest you saved by doing what's called a prepayment, putting this extra money over and above the minimum payment? We're told always to, if you want to get rid of debt, you can't just pay the minimum payment. You got to pay more than the minimum payment. But just telling you to put more doesn't tell you what you're actually getting for it. You see, folks, it is important for us to know how to manage interest cost, not just how to choose an interest rate. How do I manage interest cost? I don't want to just look at a payment. I want to know, what does it cost me to manage the debt? And if I'm kept illiterate about how mortgages actually work, let me put this back on the screen. If I'm kept illiterate about the fact that A 3% mortgage means I'm going to pay back 51% of what I borrowed. If I have a 6% mortgage, I'm going to pay back 115% of what I borrowed. If that is what's going on, I will not know what's happening to me. And the P.I.L.L method is here to make sure that you get educated on what is actually happening to you. It is so important for not just you, but your family, for generations. You see, this has been going on since 1936. How loans actually work, how mortgages actually work. All right. So prepayments can cancel future scheduled interest. Okay. But if you don't know how much, how can you come up with a strategy that's going to benefit you? Even many financial advisors can't explain how amortization schedules function. They know how to create one, but how does it function? That's what we need to know. So as consumers, what are we told? Just pay extra when you can. But very few know exactly, here's the points, how much interest they'll actually save, what the true return on their prepayment is, what outcomes they're achieving. Folks, if you don't know what outcomes you're achieving, why are you doing anything? When you go to work, you know how many hours you put in. You know how to do the math. I make this much per hour, therefore I'm supposed to get this much. And you know how to measure your outcomes. But you're going to take that same money you work hard for, you're going to give it over to the banks and not know how much it costs you to borrow the money. You know what the interest rate is, but you don't know what the interest cost is. And once you know what the interest cost is, you don't know how to manage the cost so you can pay the least amount of cost that's possible. When you go to buy something, you want to go to buy a house, do you negotiate the price of the house? When you go to buy a new car, do you negotiate the price of the car? Or do you just pay sticker and that's it? No, you negotiate the price of the car. Do you negotiate the price of how much it's going to cost you to borrow money? No, you just negotiate the interest rate, but not know the full interest cost over the life of the loan. We're taught to ignore that because to pay attention to it, to learn how to read that, would get in the way of people making money. And you don't want to get in the way of people making their money. This is why it is so important for you not to understand it so that they can make that money. Okay? So, the modern profit model, here it is. Ignorance equals bank profits. Ignorance equals bank profits. Okay? Banks and investors make money directly from this widespread misunderstanding. Now, how does that happen? So here's what's happening. And let me break down for you how an investor makes money on this thing. Okay. So if this is a mortgage that you have, let's say whether it is your personal home or it's a rental property that you're using to make money. Okay. So it's a $200,000 mortgage and your payment is $1,000 at 6%. Your payment is $1,199.10. Look at this. Once you sign and close on this mortgage is sold to an investor. And the investor, once you make your payment, the principal and interest, all the principal and interest goes to the investor, all of it. So, but they get to discount your payment but they call it interest. It's interest on the money borrowed. But let's look at what this really is once you're educated on what's happening. The first interest payment is $1,000. Okay? $1,000. So we're going to put our calculator on the screen. Okay? There it is. First interest payment is $1,000. So we put in $1,000 and then we divide it by our total payment, which is $11.99 That equals 83%. So when you make your payment and give your money to the investor that bought your mortgage, when you give them $1,199.10 on that very first payment, 83% of the payment gets discounted and only $199.10 gets applied to the mortgage. That's it. They get to discount it by 83%. After 1 year, look at this. After 1 year, if you add up all the principal payments for 1 year, it comes to $2,456 and a penny. And they get to discount all your payments by $11,933.19. What does that mean? Let me put the calculator back on the screen. Your payment of $11.99.10 times 12 equals $14,389.20. You're going to give the investor that bought your mortgage, if this is your mortgage, $14,389.20 in 1 year. But they get to discount that payment by $11,933.19. So only $2,456 and a penny of what you paid out gets applied to your mortgage, meaning you have to keep giving them money for 360 months. They take your one mortgage and turn it into 360 separate mortgages. That is what's happening. Now, I know that this may not be a popular subject to most, but I'm here for those who this will be a popular subject for, even a few, even if it's 5, even if it's 6, even if it's 1. Somebody needs to know how to read an amortization schedule so that they can stop handing over their wealth to the financial banking elite, because ignorance is part and parcel of our financial education. Our financial education is so lacking that it is, we call it financial violence. That is how difficult this thing is for me. Every time I look at it, every time I try to wrap my mind around it so that we're out here telling people about what's really going on, financial violence is what's really going on. After 2 years, after $28,000 has been paid out, only $5,000 counts for the mortgage. After 3 years, after $43,000 is paid out, only $7,800 goes to the mortgage. After 5 years, okay, we have $70,000 paid out, but only $13,800 goes towards the mortgage. That is ridiculous money. Okay, so let me put it out like, let me put it to you like this. We have $11.99.10 times 60 payments, $71,946. After 5 years of payments, paying out $71,946, only $13,891.20 pays down the mortgage. The interest cost on that just for 5 years is $58,000. If you knew ahead of time that in 5 years, the cost of borrowing this money was going to cost you 58,000 of your dollars, would you want to know more about how it works? Let me get into the part 5 of our thing here, okay? The P.I.L.L method is the solution to breaking the chains. The P.I.L.L method provides true financial literacy. You need to know how this works. You need to know how they're figuring it out. It teaches clients exactly how amortization extracts your wealth that you should be giving over to your children. And stop listening to the fact that you are gaining wealth through equity in your property. And you're mainly focused on how your property appreciates through time. And that is true. Your property will appreciate through time. But what is also true is that we're making the banks and investors ultra rich because they're charging you at the beginning, towards the beginning of your loan, over 80% interest on your loan. They get to call it 6%, but it's really over 80% that they're making early in this loan. It averages out. It averages out to in this case 115.838% of what you borrowed goes to the investor. That is crazy. That's crazy money. That money would be better off invested for your family, not giving it to the banks. Using you can use a computer system that is specifically designed to make sure you pay the least amount of interest that's mathematically possible. Using an AI-powered opportunity cost calculator to optimize every payment for maximum interest cancellation. Empowers borrowers to see exactly how much interest they can cancel with each dollar applied. Every single dollar you make is important, and it should be working as hard as it possibly can for you and your family. But it is infinitely more complicated than we have been led to believe. How we are charged interest. It is important for you to know how this works. So if you take your interest, okay, let me show you what's happening with this mortgage. $200,000 at 6%, okay? Payment is $1,199.10. So if we take the interest rate, which is 6%, okay, and divide it by 12, we get 0.005. That is the number that they use every single month to figure out how much they're going to discount your payment by. So when you multiply this by 200,000, there it is, 200,000. Need one more zero. Okay, multiply by 200,000, it comes to $1,000, which leaves out of the payment only $199.10 going to the mortgage. And so now they're going to take that same 0.005% and multiply it by the new principal balance, which is $199,800. Let's bring back our calculator here. All right. So we take our 0.005, that's taking 0.06 and dividing it by 12, we come up with 0.005, and we multiply it by the new principal balance times $199,800.90 equals $999. That's the interest payment on line 2. So that's how it's done. So it's not one mortgage, ladies and gentlemen. This system turns one mortgage into 360 separate mortgages. And each and every month, you pay 1/12. You take 1/12 of the interest rate and multiply it by the unpaid balance 360 times. That's why it is so doggone expensive. That's why you're paying 115.838% and not even realizing it, because they told us it was 6%. They told us it was 6%. Look at here. $231,676 on a $200,000 loan. That's crazy. When you should be paying 2/3 less. You should be able to pay 1/3 of that to buy the same house and take the rest of the money and invest it in your family's wealth, building up an inheritance for your children's children. That's what we should be doing with this money. So what we want to do here at the P.I.L.L method is transform the invisible into the visible, from ignorance to mastery. You need to learn how to master how to leverage your money, period. Now, I know that this particular program is probably not the most exciting, but it needs to be the most beneficial. For somebody out there is tired of making loan payments, even though they're not in trouble. They can do whatever they want to do. Their bills are paid every single month without fail, and they're doing it with ease. But when they look at the bottom line, when they look at how long they've been paying and how much they've been paying, and see that the principal has barely moved. I talked to somebody yesterday that found out they have over 30 years left on their mortgage and credit cards. They found out yesterday, by using the P.I.L.L method, they could be out of debt in under 5 years. It is amazing when people find out how this thing actually is supposed to work. And they say, how can that be? It's because we not only give you the technology to do it, we give you the financial education and make you financially literate so that you can learn how to leverage your money so that you can pay the least amount of interest and get the most benefit out of borrowing money. That is so important to learn. And how do we learn that? Okay, I got more for you. After this, though. I want you to listen to this, and then we'll come back and give you some insight into what you can do to transform the visible transform the invisible into the visible. Take you from ignorance to mastery. But watch this. I'll be right back.
Listen to me, y'all. But one of his mentees took us through one of their programs, and I paid off my mortgage. But guess what happened? My marriage went to a whole nother level. And you know why? Because my wife is a security freak. And even when I blew up, my wife would be like, oh, you blew up, but how long is you gonna keep making this kind of money? I was like, I don't know, forever. She's like, you sure? Because I'm gonna keep my license as a nurse just in case you don't. So when I paid the house off, my boy was like, you ain't gotta do that, you can do this. But when I paid the house off using that program, it took the stress level all the way down for my wife because we no longer had a mortgage. Does that make sense? That thing that was coming every month, that was getting on her nerves, we didn't have that no more. And so she was at rest.
So, folks, if you want to know how to get rid of all of your debt in about 7 years, I'm talking about your mortgage, your student loans, your credit cards, everything, car loans, everything. The person I talked to yesterday told me that they've been trying just to pay off their credit cards for years. And no matter what they do, the credit card debt persists because we have not been taught how interest actually works to enslave us, to keep us in debt, so that people who own the credit card companies, who own the banks, who buy up our mortgages as investors, they want to keep us ignorant to the fact so that they can make more money. So if you want to know the month, day, and year you could be debt free and how much interest you can save, go to pillmethod.com, pillmethod or ice10k.com, either one, pillmethod.com or ice10k.com, and click on the button that says get your savings and earnings report. Get your savings and earnings report. Folks, it doesn't cost you a dime to put your information in here to find out how much interest you can save and when you can be completely out of debt. And keep this in mind, you can live a great lifestyle while you're doing it. You can save more money towards retirement while you're doing it. Okay? And you can pay off all of your debt in an average of 7 to 9 years. You can do all three of these things at the same time once you know how it works. Oh my gosh. That is why we exist, folks. We exist so people can learn the truth about what's really going on. So, what the P.I.L.L method leverages knowledge. We need you to leverage knowledge. We're teaching the knowledge that we've amassed over 19 years, and we're giving it to you so that you can break free from the chains of debt by understanding how it actually works. We're going to give you the strategy. We're going to give you the technology to fully reverse engineer the system that was designed to profit from your financial blindness. Go to ice10k.com and get a savings and earnings report. So, what is our core message? Education has always been the enemy of oppression, whether it's oppression through slavery, whether it's oppression trying to keep people poor, whether it's oppression to keep people paying interest forever. It doesn't matter. Once you're educated, you can break free. The Bible says the truth will make you free. The truth makes you free. And here's what happens when we don't have the truth. We can be convinced that the information that we have that is actually enslaving us, we actually believe that this is what we need. People can convince us that the current system is all we need. And here are the instructions, or here are the rules to the current system. But these rules, ladies and gentlemen, the rules that we currently have keep us in debt forever. Biweekly payments are designed to keep us in debt longer than we should be in debt. Putting large down payments on loans. It's designed for us to pay more money in interest than we need to pay. What else? Trying to get the lowest interest rate possible. That is also designed to keep us in debt longer and to pay more interest. When we are thinking that logically getting the lowest interest rate should be the best thing to do. No, it's not. When we're taught that which is the best, a 30-year loan or a 15-year mortgage? Dave Ramsey is teaching right now, if you can't afford a 15-year mortgage, you can't afford the house. And I'm here to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, you should never, ever get a 15-year mortgage, because you can pay off a 30-year mortgage faster and cheaper. And what is more exciting, once you know how, a 30-year mortgage, which is interest only for the first 10 years, you can pay it off cheaper and faster than a regular conventional mortgage. Once you know how. Okay? Education has always been the enemy of oppression. First, they suppressed reading. Slaves, it is against the law for you to learn how to read. Once, what was it, Nat Turner? Yeah, it was Nat Turner. Or was it? I can't remember. Listen, I don't want to get this wrong, but I learned of a story. I think it was Nat Turner, who was born a slave, but because he knew how to read, he wrote his own past papers so that he can get so that he can travel to freedom. Because slaves weren't supposed to learn how to read or write, he wrote out his own freedom papers to get him to freedom. He wrote it out himself. You see, once you know how to read, ladies and gentlemen, you can write your own financial ticket out of debt. You can do this yourself. Okay? So once they first suppressed reading, now they suppress financial understanding. But the principle remains: the less you know, the more they control of your wealth. The less you know, the more they control. Why is this important? Why is this important? Just think about it. Can you explain how a mortgage actually works? How a credit card actually works? Yeah, you know the basics. Yeah, they charge us interest, but do you know that you don't have to do it that way? That if you understand how it works, you can cut your interest that you're supposed to pay by 75% with your current budget. Did you know that? If you're supposed to pay $100,000 in interest, did you know that you were only supposed to pay about $20,000 instead to own the same house? I listen, I know 20,000 is still a lot, but it's $80,000 less than 100,000. Okay? And if you can get the same house for $80,000 less, what could you do with your 80 grand? You can invest it in your family instead of giving it to the bank so they can invest it and make themselves richer. Investors do not want you to know how this works. Why? Let me show you why. Let me put this back on the screen. Here's why. Because once you know this, once you know that it would normally cost $11,933.19 of your money to pay your loan, your $200,000 mortgage down to here in 1 year at 6%. They don't want you to know that if you paid this much on your loan up front, you're paid down to here in 1 month. So you get to pay your loan down to here, not for $11,933. You get to pay your loan down to here for $1,000 only. If everybody knew this, here is the key to everything we've been talking about today, ladies and gentlemen. If everybody knew this, would your loans be attractive to investors to purchase if you knew that by prepaying $2,456 and a penny, you could pay your loan down to here for just $1,000 in interest instead of $11,933.19? That cuts into the profits for the investor who bought the mortgage. Do you see why it benefits everyone on the other side of your equation? the profit side, our ignorance to this makes them money. I'm telling you, folks. Listen, I saw somebody who had $10,000 sitting in a bank account making 0.1%. That's it. $10,000 sitting in a bank account making 0.1%, and they have a mortgage. If they put $10,000 on this mortgage, look what happens. They knock off almost 4 years off this mortgage and save $43,000 in interest that the investor will not make. Why would an investor buy this mortgage when after 4 years they would make 46 grand on it? But if you knew that you could prepay $10,700, they wouldn't make 46 grand on this. They would only make $1,000 to pay the loan down to right here. That's it. They would make $1,000 to pay the loan down to here. If you gave the bank on the very first payment $10,770.87. Guess what else they don't want you to know? What if you have the ability to put 10 or 20% down? Okay, 10 or 20% down. But at the P.I.L.L method, we're teaching you not to put 10 or 20% down. Put the least amount down that you possibly can. 10% on 200,000, that's 20,000. 20% would be 40,000. So if you had 40,000 you could put on this loan, I'm saying keep it to yourself. Keep it. And if you don't know anything about the P.I.L.L method, you don't know about that P.I.L.L method stands for prepayment of principal, isolating the principal amount, leverage, and liquidity. You don't know any of that. But what you do know is how to prepay and what it will do for you. So if you have $40,000 on a $200,000 loan that you could have put down, but you held it back and you put it down as a prepayment instead of a down payment, I need you to see why the banking elite, the investors, want you to remain ignorant as to why this works. They don't want you to learn how to read, because once you learn how to read, folks, that is your key to freedom. Learning how to read. Putting $40,000 on this loan does this. If you put it down on the first payment, look what it does. It knocks off 140 payments. 144 payments is 12 years. 144 payments is 12 years. You can knock off almost 12 years off this loan if you keep your 20% and not put it as a down payment, but you use it as a prepayment because you know how to read, and you would kill $127,000 that the investor would make, because you could pay your loan down to right here for only $1,000 in interest instead of $127,000 in interest. Folks, so if you know how to read, if you know what's going on here, you could have taken that $126,000 and invested it in your family and start growing your generational wealth by understanding how to read. Reading is your key to financial freedom. And at the P.I.L.L method, we teach you how to read. I'll be back right after this. How many want to know how to pay off all of your debt in an average of 7 to 9 years? You can do all of this without refinancing, without change to your budget, without sacrificing lifestyle.
Me and my husband do the P.I.L.L method, and last year we were able to pay down $33,000 on our mortgage without feeling like we were poor. We still did tons of entertaining things and enjoyed our family.
You don't have to eat beans and rice every day. You don't have to cut up your credit cards. You don't have to drive a 30-year-old car. You don't have to sell pizzas at night to pay off your mortgage. All you need to do is pay the bank less interest. That's what we're talking about today. Here is what P.I.L.L method stands for: prepayment of principal, isolation of principal amounts, leverage, and liquidity. You understand it? You have a way of getting out of debt more efficiently. The interest rate you're quoted is not the interest rate you pay. You think you're buying a $500,000 home. The true cost of that home is what? $758,000. Total interest paid as a percentage of principal, 51.777%. That's what's going on with this loan. The ability to read and defeat an amortization schedule is not taught at any level of financial education. I need you to understand the power of a penny. You will not hear what I'm talking about from Dave Ramsey. Do you know why? Because I own the copyright. I literally wrote the book.
But Don has some valuable information that can contribute to the quality of a person's life. And it only costs you a few dollars. It's his book. Why not get that?
I'm going to go through the P.I.L.L method myself with some of my investment properties. So I'm going to link up with Don, and then I'm going to sit down with him, show him my investment portfolio, and see how I can eliminate interest.
Ladies and gentlemen, financial education is paramount. Learning how to read an amortization schedule is just as important was just as important for enslaved people to learn how to read. Education during the Reconstruction era was vital to blacks and poor whites, so that they can learn how to vote for their own interests instead of being led by others. Folks, education, our financial education, our financial literacy, how to borrow money at a discount, how to borrow money cheaply, is a key to leveraging so that we can build wealth. But we don't know this because it's not taught in our schools. So if you want to know how to get this information for yourself, go to PILLmethod.com, or go to ice10k.com. It's going across the screen, and click on the button that says Get a Savings and Earnings Report. Okay? Get a savings and earnings report. And once you get that savings and get to that page, fill out this basic information. Click on I want to save, and then you will be led into our financial form. Follow the form, answer the questions, and my staff will take over from there, and we'll call you to confirm your information to make sure it's correct, and we can produce for you a savings and earnings report. You can know the month, day, and year you could be debt-free and how much interest you can save and stop giving it to the bank. And most of our clients save at least 75% of the scheduled interest payments, and they don't have to change their budget to do it. You're going to do it with your current budget. You don't have to make more money, and you don't have to live like a pauper to do it. You don't have to steal money from your family. You don't have to enjoy life less to get out of getting out of debt. What you need to understand is how to give the bank back their money or the investor their money without them being able to discount your payments. You can learn how to do that. And once you know how to do that, you can borrow money like a champ. I mean, like nobody's business, because you will pay the least amount of money to borrow money that's mathematically possible for you every single dollar you have. you're going to get the biggest bang for your buck because you now know how to read. So I'm going to leave you with this. Education, I said it before. Okay. Education has always been the enemy of oppression. And right now, folks, we are financially oppressed. I don't care how much money you make. I don't care if you even have a black card. I don't care how much you have in the bank or in your investments. If you are borrowing money, you're paying way too much interest for it, and somebody else is getting rich. 35 to 39% of your income for most families goes to pay interest. You need to cut that way down, and you can. Education has always been the enemy of the oppressed, and we are the oppressed because we have not been taught this. First, they suppressed reading. Now they suppress financial understanding. They're even getting rid of the Department of Education. Folks, education being suppressed is alive and well today. When are we going to take it upon ourselves to get the education, the financial education we need that we are offering here at P.I.L.L Method? Go to ice10k.com and not only get a savings and earnings report, but start getting the education you and your family deserve. Start doing that today. Get it done today, because every day you stay in darkness is another link in that chain that enslaves us to our debt. The less we know, the more they control. Folks, that's my show for today. I hope it's been beneficial to you. I'm going to leave you also with our phone number here at the P.I.L.L Method, 256-886-1867. That's 256-886-1867. Give us a call if you want more information, but get that savings and earnings report today. Thank you so much for your time and for your attention. And I'll be back next week with more information, okay? So, well, that's it. Let me see here. Got to find our theme song, and we'll be out of here until next week. There it is. See you next week.